Boy, here's one that's been a long time in the making. This is a number 4 Mark 1 mutt. It came with just glued up wood on it. The muzzle's already been not even cut off square. The bayonet lugs are missing. There's a rancher out west that wants us to make him an epic truck gun that he can pull out of a bucket and bring major caliber firepower that's not 4.5 feet long. I've got a different take on how to cut down an old Milsurp rifle. And before anybody gets their knickers in a twist, I'm going to show you how to do this without doing it in Bubba style. Let's get on down the rabbit hole, shall we? We've got basically a solid, there's a solid weapon here. It's all here. It's a number 4 Mark 1. Well, here's the deal. The guy that owns this thing, he wants a truck gun. He's got a genuine jungle carbine, but you don't take a jungle carbine, throw it in your vehicle and ride it all over the place out on your ranch. What he wants is a gun that can just be basically abused. And I'm going to tell you what, the basic underlying engineering in this rifle, you know, these guns take a lot of heat sometimes for not being very accurate. They're not this, they're not that, they're not the other thing. They're rugged, they're durable, they're reliable. The ammunition is sufficiently powerful. They're made well enough, and they were in service for what, 50 or 60 years? Well, longer than that, hell. So the basic underlying gun is really, really rugged. This is a great platform to start from. This particular rifle, there isn't a matching serial number on this thing anywhere. I'd be willing to tell you that the receiver is a wartime fab. I can't even tell you what all the individual bits are. There's screws missing. There's all kinds of stuff. It's got a walnut rear end, and it's got this poplar looking whatever bottom on it, and I don't even know what it doesn't matter. The nose cap had been, the bayonet lug had been fobbed off of it. And it was crowned at a really, it's like an 11-degree crown, except an 11-degree crown is supposed to be where the muzzle's dented in, not that the thing is tilted by 11 degrees. Okay, so the other thing was, this is called Project Tanker because the gentleman that owns this particular gun, U.S. Army, tanks. Okay, so the guy was an armor guy. I can do that. All right, walnut back end, scrub front end, and I said, well, I'm going to go hunt some wood for this particular project. And he said, no, I got all kinds of wood laying around. I said, great, give me the crappiest, biggest piece of garbage front end wood you've got if it's made out of walnut. And he sent me this, and this thing is nasty, and it doesn't really matter because we're going to remove a dramatic amount of this wood, and I'm going to tell you what I propose to do here for this project. So he sent us this, and then a repop front and rear handguard. I'm sorry, this is repop. This might be original, but it sure as heck looks like it's reproduction because it's too nice, it's too clean, it doesn't have any inspector's marks on it, it doesn't have anything. So what are we really trying to do here? We're going to shorten this gun down as far as is legally prudent. Now, how short do you want a 303 Brit full house battle rifle round to come out of? Whew, I'm going to tell you what, brutal. Didn't they do some kind of, I'm talking to Bruno here, didn't they do some kind of, an Oberett, what was that? A little shortened down, took these things and cut them, it doesn't matter. We're not making this thing into a handgun. We're making it into a very short rifle. And the way we're going to do that, most of these rifles are shortened from the muzzle back, and you'll see them with cut fore ends. The wood, they're sticking out, and the barrels of the original, they're shortened from the front. What we're going to do with this gun, I've been thinking about this. I've had this thing for a year. I've been fantasizing about this project. We're going to shorten it this way. We're going to shorten it from the middle. We're going to make it look like it came out of the manufacturing facility and they intended it to have a 16 3/8 of an inch barrel, and they intended it to be contoured that way. We're talking about shortening a rifle here, and we have to talk about, there's some legalities here that you can't go below certain lengths. And I want to talk about how to measure those lengths and why they're significant very quickly. All right. There is, in the back end of every one of these guns, there is something called an abutment. I can actually use this screwdriver. With the action closed and you run a bar down the muzzle, you touch off on the recoil surface, right? That is the length of the barrel. That's as it's defined, and I'm just going to roughly measure that as 3 1/4. You go, so this isn't a 3 1/4 inch barreled gun. This gun's got a 1 inch barrel on it. No, it's 3 1/4. This Model 29, if we measure it the same way, this Model 29 will come out up against the recoil shield. That's the barrel length right there. Okay, that's got an 8 inch barrel on it. It does not have, you go, well, the barrel on this gun is only 5 inches long. No, it's an 8 inch barrel. So if we do the same thing on this box stock, gun, okay, and we measure it, this gun's got a 24 inch barrel. It's 24 inches long. It's a full 2 feet. It's a service rifle, all right? We're going to give up some velocity when we do this shortening. Now, you can shorten a barrel. You can run, well, how is a 14 inch barrel legal? Well, here it's still wrapped in a tape, so we didn't get any oil on it. But this particular barrel right here is only 14 inches long from where the abutment's going to be to the front. However, if we weld or blind pin, and I'm going to blind pin because this thing is just too nice. If we blind pin this so that it requires machining in order to take it off, it's now considered to be part of the barrel. And if you drop the rod down, you measure from the face of the bolt to the front end of the flash hider, and that's how that can count. But it has to be, you have to use, I'm not using the right words here. I'm not trying to quote ATF to you. What I'm trying to tell you is that you have to machine it in order to get it off. If you can just screw it off, or it's held on with blue Loctite and a lot of torque takes, it's got to be mechanically, you have to deface it, grind it up. I don't know the right words, but just know that if it requires a lathe or a grinder, it's probably on hard enough. In this case, we're going to have to put some kind of flash hider on this bad boy in order to quell what's going to be an epic amount of muzzle blast. And we have to be able to disassemble and reassemble the weapon over the top of something that's welded on. That's going to require some engineering that I haven't completely figured out yet, but I'm thinking the flash hider and the front sight tower are going to become unified, and then we'll figure out how we're going to get the front sight off of it. I don't know, we'll figure it out. I definitely want the protector wings on this because I want this to be able to be thrown in the thrown on the floorboard of a car. So if we know this is 24 inches from the abutment to the front, how short can this barrel be? Well, we come on out to 16 inches here. And that 16 and the end of the barrel can be down about where my finger is, right about where this pencil line is. And that pencil line isn't really going to tell you much. So I'm going to lay this piece of masking tape on here, and that's going to tell us where the front edge is. So I'm going to run this arrow out. And that's going to tell you where the front of the gun has to be. Now I'm here to tell you, save the next guy some grief. We're going to go to 16 3/8 of an inch. We'll go to 16.375. If you're going to shorten a shotgun barrel up, shorten it up to 18 3/8. And that way, if the muzzle gets damaged, it can be faced back in such a way that it doesn't create a short barrel shotgun or short barrel rifle out of it. That's an important point. And just remember that. Give the next guy something to work with, and don't make a felon out of the owner of it. Just don't do that. All right, the underlying engineering of this is this. We've got the barrel naked. We can see the Knox form up here. It is what it is. There's no major rush shankers. The inside of the bore is, no really good way to show you the inside of the bore right now. The inside of the bore's got some issues, but I'm going to tell you what, that's probably a better thing. The crown is screwed on this. That'll have to get redone. So we're not hacking up some museum grade example. And that's one of the things I want to actually talk about. There's 4 levels to this. You clean them, you do the refurbishment, you do the conservation, and then you do a reset. But you've got to do some, you've got to do some research before you do this. And I'll tell you, we're not bubbaing or fudding this. 99% of these guns die from rust to every one of these that gets modified or cut. So unless you're campaigning or making a big deal out of actually saving these guns, I really don't want to hear it. What we're doing here is taking a far less than pristine example that we hunted. We hunted one of these. This is one of those ones you find in a barrel. We're not cutting up a numbers matching gun. We know it didn't belong to Sir Lawrence of Arabia because we did the research. So now we're moving into this stage. So having said that, where is 16 3/8 of an inch on this barrel? Okay, so first thing we got to do is we got to find the breech. Bang, that's down there. So that's our 24. And then I've got to grab an extension gizmo here, right there. And then we're going to measure 16. I'm going to say 17 just for right now. I'm going to say 16 and a half. And we're going to take that. Now where, that's that. I got to figure out how the heck I want to do this here. So we're going to take a little piece of tape and we're just going to put that little piece of tape right about the end of where we want to be. And then we're going to say, we'll drive that in. This represents where the abutment is at the muzzle. So now I've got a datum here. We'll take that there. And now we know if we come back to that piece of tape right there, we know that this is our 16-inch line right there. So that's all the shorter the barrel can be, plus a little bit. That's what all of our slop in it. That's how much tube we're going to remove from this. So right around 16 3/8, because that's where the bolt face is right there. You can't, here's what will happen. People will say, well, this barrel is only 23 1/8 inches long. It's not. That's just where the threads are. The face of the bolt is back here somewhere, and you don't know that unless you drop the rod. Okay, we got a couple of options here. The first place we're going to cut this barrel when we cut it, we're going to lop it off right at the 16 3/8 inch point. And then we're going to do the rest of the engineering on this. Once we're sure that we know how we want to put the gun together, then we can commit to cutting the barrel back until the end of the flash hider winds up at the 16 3/8 point after everything's torqued down, and we TIG weld this whole thing back on again and fuse it into one solid part. Here are the challenges. How do we get the barrel bands on it? How do we get the front sight off of it? These are all things that have to be attacked before this project can go too much further than pulling it off and cutting it. For those of you that have never seen a barrel come off of an SMLE, you're going to see that. My friend Rick here from the Artisan Shop is making me up the tool that will fit over the Knox form so that we can correctly hang on to the back end of this. And then there's all kinds of places we can grab the receiver here so we don't twist the receiver. You don't hold the receiver back here and apply the torque here and wonder why the hell a bolt don't run up and down a raceway anymore. So that's there. And so we don't need a bolt anymore. I'm going to make the bolt go away here. I'm going to remember that's got to come down. Oh, out. That's right. It's out and up, right? How does it? Oh, yeah, that's what. That's not sliding in that. There we go. That has to slide down. Let me show you this. That slides down. And when that slides down, it comes out of that notch and allows the bolt to come right out the rear end of it. And the bolt head is removable. Cover all that later. We don't need to know that right now. That's going to happen in the conservation phase of this whole mess. So here's what I'm planning. No matter what happens, that's going to be about where the muzzle is. Whether it's got a brake sticking out of it, whether it's got a flash hider sticking out of it, or whether or not it's just got some barrels sticking out of it. So let's go now to this nasty piece of walnut. Ordinarily, we showed you before what it looks like when somebody just cuts one of these guns back. In this particular case, I want to have the nose metal be here. I want to put the nose metal right there, like that. And then we're going to change the slope of the wood. This is where I'm at right now. This may change as this goes along because I'm engineering this thing on the fly. But we're going to change the slope of this wood so that instead of tapering out to this point right here, it tapers out to this point, and then we're going to move everything. So we're going to make the gun get shorter. Then there's some implications about the upper handguard. So we've got to figure out a way to have the upper handguard sit on this thing. I got to figure out how we're going to do that. I'm thinking maybe we take the forward metal. We take this forward metal and we inlet it into that piece of wood and reshape it. So then this barrel band fits up over that right there like that. Yeah, that may be how we do it. Like that, right there. We may have that right back there like that. That'd be slick, right? That right there. Oh yeah, now we're starting to get somewhere. So we'll do that. And then once we do all that, then all this other claptrap, the front sight tower will hang out the center. That'll sit right there. And that'll sit up against the nose metal like it originally did. So that's going to leave us really with only one engineering challenge. Let's see, that's going to go there. Right, we can cut all this off and then inlet the old nose metal. Hand me that stock right there, the big piece. Right. We'll take the old nose metal off. So basically it'll look like this. Right. Then the big one's going to be, how do we get the front sight tower off of this thing so we can clean it? And that may be, we may cut this in half and put a set of ears on it, weld a set of ears on it in such a way that this thing will actually look a lot like a barrel band. So we'll mimic that on there on the bottom of it. We'll put a set of tits on it like that, so that when you screw that together and you run the cross pin through that keeps it from rotating on the barrel, that's going to work. Then we'll take this boss here that has these wings machined into it and cut that piece of barrel off, drill a hole through it, inlet it up onto there, weld the whole thing up solid. Yeah, now we're talking. Jared's setting up in the lathe here. We've got a steady rest on the front end of this, and in case you're wondering why we didn't indicate off the back, this barrel is about as parallel as a pool noodle. So we're not worried about it. We're just going to try to get the threads as straight as we can up front, and then we're just going to pray to God that the projectile doesn't hit the flash suppressor. We have the luxury in this case of really not caring about the surface finish on the barrel because the whole thing is going to get pulled down anyway. So all we're doing here is just, he's already cut the barrel off and faced it. Then it's going to get crowned and threaded. And I don't know what order he's going to do it in, but I want to make the bold assumption you're going to thread first and then crown?
Crown first and thread.
Crown first and thread. Outstanding. All you guys that are going to teach in the future, your student appears to have a clue, let them run. Don't continuously tell them how things have to be done. There's a million different ways to do things. Right now, Jared's just doing the idiot check to make sure that it, well, passes the idiot check. While we've got this barrel spinning slow, I want you to get a look at the fact that this thing's dancing a Watusi back here. All the way in the back. Yeah, you can actually see right over here, you can see that barrel just jumping around. That's what it took to get the front to run straight. Yes, he is crowning it with a countersink because this gun is going to be minute a football pitch, and that's about all the better it was ever going to be in the first place. So don't overthink this, guys, when you're building this stuff. Just don't overthink it. Before you, okay. I'm going to make a camera move here while it's turning. So right there, I want you guys to look at. So right there, I want to show you guys how much this World War II wartime production barrel is jumping around to get the last 3 inches of it to run true. And I'm not making this stuff up. Keep going, brother. So now you're going to thread it?
Yep. Just gonna collapse this thing up.
Okay. So now the steady rest is torqued down, and we're going to go take a look at whether or not the muzzle is going to run true under power here. Okay, muzzle's got a little bit of run out to it. He'll probably just tweak that out or cut them the way it is. Oh, that's about all you're going to get.
I think that's just how fucking barrel is.
All right, so it's a little bit off. It's off about 2 or 3 thousandths, and we're at the limit of what we can do here. So we're just going to cut the threads because this is not a suppressor we're mounting on the nose of this thing. This is some really funky 9/10 of a millimeter modulus thread we're going to cut custom, and it's got a big hole in the front end of it. We are not in imminent peril of smacking a projectile into the side of this. This gun is bent enough, we would not be able to put a suppressor on it. It would not work. There's no way. Because even if you stick a rod down the muzzle of this, it's still going to be off far enough that your $1,500 can is going to wind up with a hole in one of the baffles. So right now we're just clearing any microscopic splooge that happens to still be up inside the crown. All that's important here is that it releases the projectile evenly across out of all of the rifling grooves at the same time and throws it. The fact that this barrel's got a little bit of a bend in it isn't going to matter as long as when it heats up it doesn't bend too well. There's a lot of things that are not in the short magazine Lee Enfield's favor. Rear locking lugs and then wartime production methods are going to tell you that they were what they were. They were bullet hoses, and they were really, really good because they needed a lot of them. But as far as building yourself a bench rest rifle, an SMLE is probably not the action you want to do it on. So the setup Jared's using, you can get away with on a lathe that has an apron that weighs 500 pounds like this one. He has the tool upside down. We have the lead screw direction in reverse, so he'll be able to plunge in and cut away. So then he will not have to critically stop the tool at the end of every thread, and it lets him get a really sharp shoulder on it and threads that come out, and then you can cut a little bit quicker and get on with it. All right, before you come back in, can you aim that light at the threads? Here we go. Does that look better? A little bit of light that's dancing on that muzzle makes that thing look like it's going around a lot worse than it is. But you gotta believe me, what you're seeing here on video is not the other 45 minutes we spent coming up with 3 different ways to set this barrel up. This upside down arrangement, it's nice for critical threads. Play with it on a piece of wood first. It won't work on if you've got a smaller lathe, if you've got a hobby lathe, don't try this because the thrust is up. Right now we're depending upon a very heavy apron to keep this thing from climbing up on top of the workpiece and just pretty much hosing it up. Because we're cutting metric threads, we do not have the luxury of disengaging the lead screw. So what Jared's doing is backing up under power and getting as close as he can get here. And then he'll plunge back in and pick the cut back up. This is an East German lathe that was made in India. So you've got an English lead screw with gears that are approximating a metric modulus. So the least common denominator of that overlaps somewhere out on the other side of the parking lot. You never know where that is. Metric lathes can cut metric screws and you don't have to worry about it. But if you're cutting metric screws with an English lathe, this is just a rolling approximation. I'm gonna hear it from the machinists out there. Your setup was screwed up. You're cutting and trying. We'll only do one of these. Yeah, there's a much more technically elegant way to do this, and by the time you're done setting it up, I'm 3 guns down the line. So I understand where the technical machinists are coming from. If we had to make 50 of these, and we were working on parts that were coming from upstream into production process, and then we were having to hand these parts downstream into production process. What we are doing is a disaster. I understand that. But this is a one-of-a-kind gun. One set of threads got to fit one part, and this is going to get it done. I've got the rear handguard and the front, the upper handguards, and we're going to want to make this one handguard a little bit longer. Now, this isn't the wood we're going to cut. This is the wood we're going to cut. I've already gotten a jig, and we're going to see that back here in Richard's shop in a minute. But it occurs to me that you wouldn't understand what the heck we're doing back there unless I explain this right now. So here's going to be the deal. We're going to cut a joint, a scarf joint across this way. And we're going to take that piece and graft it onto that part so that what you wind up with the rear upper handguard with the cut, and then you'll have the lower, or I'm sorry, the forward handguard with that piece of metal inletted on it. This is this, and at that scarf joint right there, we'll go ahead and glue this together. So the way we're going to do it all is we're going to screw it down to a board and feed it into a saw, and it looks something like this. So I'm going to cut a 22.5 degree scarf joint right here to give us a little more gluing surface, and we're going to extend this top handguard and then take it up like a duffel cut. So my assistant's hanging on just to make sure that this thing doesn't take off on us, because I can't put a screw through the middle of it, and they're different sizes. They're both being nailed down to the same board, so the scarf angle is the same. Here we go. Go down. Let go.
That's all you had to do.
All righty. Very good.
Line up.
You probably noticed I got a far more experienced woodworker with me, because I was about to wimp out and bail, and he told me to press on, so we pressed on. So I cut the scarf joint, and the scarf meets at a 22.5 degree angle just to give me a little bit of strength. And I know it's not the same size. We'll take care of that in a little bit. But the idea is going to be, I have mold release here. We're just going to drop this down on, drop that on top like that, and do a preliminary gluing here. And what this preliminary gluing will do is hold everything in its correct alignment. Once that glue sets, we'll pop this thing off, flip it over, and reinforce it. I've heard tell about guys glass bedding guns with DevCon, and I'm going to tell you I've never done it. We'll experiment with it at a later date, but for right now, Acroglass is my go-to, if only because I know exactly what this stuff will and won't do on any given moment. So here we go. I just got it all mixed up. You go one for one. There's mold release already on the barrel. And what I'm going to want to do, this thing is a little oversized. It has side-to-side slop. So I am going to put a little bit in here because I want to make a ring to support it. I want to support that, and then we'll cover up this end grain here. Now later on we'll come back like we did when we did duffel cuts. We'll come up the center of this thing with a couple of reinforcing bars there and there. We're not going to make a butt glue joint tote all of this load. Okay, so we've got that one in. Now I'm going to reach in front of the camera here, set that down, and just let that squeeze out a little bit. And there we go. Now that's going to build me a pad. Now I'm going to hear all kinds of grief about barrel harmonics and everything else. Just remember, we've either already showed you just how out of whack this barrel is. I'm not really worried about barrel harmonics and something that's going to come out of a pickup truck on a 20 below zero day up in Montana somewhere. I'm not really sweating barrel harmonics, really. Okay, so we make sure now that we're good and soaked into the end grain here. A little bit of a swoop. And then I want to pull a little bit more light over here. I'm going to go right there, set that down on, and just let that squeeze out. Now what I'm trying to do, this line, I want this line right here to be straight on both sides. or nearly straight. So I got to roll it a little bit. And I apologize for reaching in front of y'all, but I got to do it. Okay, that's got to come up. Okay. So I'm going to pick this up just a bit, roll that to the rear, and let that all set. And when that's all done, I can cut all this down, and then the existing bottom wood will come up to it, and then we'll inlet the nose cap up into here, into the bottom wood, and then cut it all down so that it looks like it started from this. Well, for right now, it's watching the acryglass dry, but while I got you guys pulled up, this is a one-of-a-kind, stupid custom thread. Pan over here for a minute, will you there, Bruno? Get me on this thread. Here we go, great. We've cut it long. The barrel is 16 5/8 long right now. So there's a 1/2 inch of barrel that's going to get removed back to here. And then that's going to put the front sight. The front sight's going to go right there. And that bad boy is going to thread on, but that'll be right there. And that will be pretty sexy, I got to tell you. But it'll allow us to thread it off, pull this off, bring the barrel band off, and the entire gun can be disassembled, because if you're watching this video, you actually believe in doing the maintenance. Have the action sitting in the bottom wood here, the 4-end wood. I know I'm getting all these terms wrong, but now bear in mind the lumber we're about to put on this action has come off of 4 different guns, so nothing really quite plays well in a sandbox with anything else. Okay, there's a little bit of slop in here. This is a little bit fat. This thing looks like it has been immersed in cosmoline for about 70 years, but it'll clean up. All right, we did that scarf joint. Here, let me see if I can get it here where you can see it. Got it glued on the inside, and then you can see the angle to the scarf here, right? So that cut has been made, and that sits right there. So, this thing is starting to come together here. The front sight band is going to be right there. Okay, let me get this out of the way here. There we go. That's a better looking background. That front sight's going to sit right there, and the flash hider is going to be on it right there. We'll get you a different angle on this here in a second to show it to you. But the whole reason why I've come out of this is all of these angles now have to be blended. This is way too fat. Up here at the front, where it's nice and thin, where this used to fit on, that is going to get moved back to here. So we'll be able to cut that wood out. There's tons of extra wood. There is so much wood left here that this entire barrel band cut is going to disappear and be laying on the floor. So as all of this blends forward, we get this step. Let me get my finger behind it here. You can see this step right here. That whole step, everything is going to blend and move up to that being mounted there, and then that's going to let that entire big fat forward barrel band go right around it there to there, like that, and hold that whole thing together. And then the whole thing is just going to be shorter. So the next thing I'm going to do here is we're going to cut this 4-end off. We're going to make it a little bit long just so we can, but we're going to cut the 4-end off right here and just get rid of this wood. It's so much easier to cut this because this is just a chunk of lumber here. Anyway, you can see where that line is right there. So I'll cut that and then start doing the things to blend it in. We'll start showing you some photos as we go through and get this tightened up. Meanwhile, while we're doing all of this, hang on a second. You're going to see me come back into this here. This shoulder right here, in order to make all this line up, we're going to push this shoulder back about 170 down. And then we're going to bring the front end of this right here. We're going to take probably the last 1/2 inch of threads off of this and let them stick up into that thread protector. And it's going to make everything line up. The front sight's going to torque up against. This is going to drop down behind. And then the flash arrestor will go over and torque up against the top. We'll maintain our minimum overall length, so we keep everybody happy as far as what this goes. And we haven't cut this gun down so short that we're burning half the fuel load of this 303 out in front of the gun. Okay, I'll take the action out because they're waiting for it over on the lathe. So Jared's on his way back over there. Missed me. I'm going real slow here because I don't want this to break out the bottom and then peel a big scab off. I got it. Oh, there's more wood there than I thought. There it is. Good. See, that's a nice and clean cut. You can see back there. Well, let me get something a little bit darker. Yeah, there's a nice clean cut right there. Now, there were some lightning cuts inside this thing that might give us some trouble, where the insides of this thing were scalloped out in order to make for some weight savings. I'm not really worried about that because the cap's going to be right over it. And then where it comes up, we're going to sand in here. I think we're going to be all right. I don't think we're going to break out. And if we do, that's what Acroglass is for, isn't it? The shape of this is starting to come together now. We've got the front sight. It's not torqued down yet. It's still off a couple of degrees this way. If you were in front of it, you would see that. And I've done that because I'm just withholding just to make sure. But we've got the now joined together top wood and the bottom wood. Now, the way this thing goes together, there's going to be a lot of this outline right here. So let me see if I can line this up on a camera so you can see it. Right now the pencil is showing you, the top of the pencil is showing you the bottom of the wood. When we're all done, the bottom of the wood's going to be up here. Then this whole thing is going to flow from the back to the front like it was designed for it. No middle band. It'll be just the front band. So the gun won't look like it's cut down. This is looking pretty sexy here. I have a very large commitment I have to go make. So we're going to hold this and stop this right here, and we'll pick it up next time with finished wood shaping, conservation, bluing, and test firing. And we'll see if we can't get this pig to actually hit something. And that would be one heck of a challenge. As always, it's been a pleasure and really glad to show you this thing. I think it's looking, I think this thing's looking pretty sexy. All right, we'll catch you on the backside. Bye.